Well, welcome everyone to another recording of the Social Media Newsroom. My name is Pascal Fintoni. Joining me, Natalie Emanet from 𝗁𝗁𝗃 Media for more news, rants and raves about your favorite social networks. Natalie, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back, Pascal. As always, I am super excited.
Well, thank you. And we're doing this, for our viewers and listeners to give you lots of ideas, to inspire you, to make the activity of being a social media marketer less lonely. So what we're going to just go through our 4 segments. We're going to begin with segment 1, Spotlight On. And we've chosen, Natalie, to go for a bit of a massive recap on video for social media.
Yes, it's such a hot topic. It's super relevant. It's always evolving. And no matter how much you know on it already, I feel like there's always something new to learn or something new to try on the exciting topic of video for social.
Yes, we're going to make that segment really practical. So make sure that you bookmark this podcast or video and jot down some of those ideas, or use AI to give you the summaries. This is the times we live in. So segment number 2, the one tech or tactic to try out. So we've chosen a bit of tech, or a tactic to make your life easier as a social media marketer. Then one of my favorite segment of the show, important, not importance. What I've done, I've researched the latest news and announcements from the world of social media. I'm going to read them out to you, Natalie. You're going to tell me whether it's important or not important, and we may pick some of those for a more in-depth discussion. And finally, we're going to close with our favorite segment. This is for you and I, but also for our wonderful viewers and listeners. It's Film Marketing Social Media Special, and we've gone for a horror film, Sinners, that was released merely a month ago, give or take.
Yes, which is quite new for us, I think.
Yeah, we normally tend to let movies live on. We go back retro. I also remember whether Sinners was our very first horror film on the show. I nearly said yes, and I remembered we've done, obviously, A Quiet Place Day 1, which I think does qualify as a horror film. But so that would be our second one, or have we done others? I'm trying to rack my brain now.
No, I think that's definitely our second one. I can't think of anything else. And I think it's still quite an interesting kind of horror within itself compared to A Quiet Place.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to be looking at is, of course, the social media marketing campaign, but a very unique context, because I would say that Sinners has probably been a surprise hit for both moviegoers and the producers. And so what can happen when you get caught out by actually something being far, far more successful than perhaps you'd planned originally? That's going to be part of our conversation. But let's move on first with our segment, Spotlight on Video Content for Social Media, just after this. So for this spotlight on video content for social media, I've been, disclaimer, you and I are massive fans of video as a content format. We're both from the world of video editing, video production, and so on, and filmmaking. But of course, we want to make sure that what we're talking about today is for people where time could be against you, maybe nervousness about using video as a format, but also making sure that your ideas and your execution would be far superior to the competition. After all, this is what's important. Can I start, Natalie, if you allow me, with some recent stats that I've been discovering with regard to video for social media? So the first one came from LinkedIn, who once or twice a year they do a report, as you know, on content consumption. And what they've said is that video watch time on LinkedIn rose 36% year on year, compared to 23, 24, with short form video creation growing twice the rate of other post formats. So that's LinkedIn perspective. Let's move on to YouTube. I'm still not sure whether YouTube qualifies as a social network, but I feel generous today. So on YouTube, Shorts will be, no surprise there, the fastest growing content format. Crazy 70 billion daily views. I don't even know how you can calculate that. Popular formats, according to the YouTube Shorts newsletter, tutorials, comedic skits, behind the scenes, trending challenges, and musical snippets. So that's kind of, the one side of the coin. On the other side of the coin, which I think is important, is what's happening with habits on social media. So according to a We Are Social annual report, internet users spend on average 2.5 hours daily on social media, which equates to roughly a third of their total online time. And what is interesting, Natalie, is that figure has been the same now for 3 years. So we're having a bit of a plateau
Mhm.
moment on social where it's almost maxed out, and this is as much people can do. But the other one, which was interesting, from a company called Brandwatch, they did some research on the term doom scrolling. People researching doom scrolling, and that rose 50% since last year. And they're suggesting that consumers and B2B customers are actively trying to manage their screen time, hence, the earlier stats earlier, and they are demanding more mindful, meaningful interaction with brands. And therefore, I'm thinking, could video be a way to have meaningful interactions?
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for the stats. I love a stat. I feel like it's always a great way to frame a discussion and give us a little bit of kind of wider context as to just exactly what we mean when we talk about the kind of importance of video as part of a kind of social media marketing strategy. And I do feel like the way in which we consume media digitally has changed massively. And while it does feel like we perhaps spend a little bit more time online, it's really interesting to know that we perhaps don't. And what I might kind of just suggest up as a bit of a possible explanation for that is perhaps that time is, as you suggest, better spent. But actually, if you were to compare reading speeds versus visual consumption of video, maybe it just feels like we spend a little bit more time online because we actually consume more media, because we consume more video content. And that certainly would fit very nicely with the rise of short form video content, which you and I will readily available to kind of refer to as the TikTok effect. So regardless of whether your brand is on TikTok, it will be seeing the consequences of the TikTok effect, which is that really short form video. Biologically, we love it. It lights up all these little receptors in our brains. As humans, as a species, we learn and understand the world around us by the way that we interpret stories and the way that we share stories. And short form video is the ultimate basic kind of video sharing, storytelling tool. And it's a really interesting way to see that kind of communication shift. And I think it's something that is a great opportunity for brands and small businesses out there. But it's something where we see a lot of content where at best you look at it and think, oh, I might not have done it quite like that. And at worst, sort of that head scratch moment of, I'm not really sure why they've made this. And it's something that, because our audience are consuming so much of this type of content, they actually have quite tight parameters on what they will and won't like to see. So it means that we've got those great opportunities, because if we can get things right, we can just build that rapport, drive that engagement, and kind of supercharge our social media marketing results. But actually, when we are using video in the wrong ways or in the wrong places, it can create a little bit of a disconnect, which in that hyper online world can create space for audiences to go elsewhere and start consuming other different forms of media. So I would say, in terms of kind of getting your video strategy right, there's a couple of key elements that you really need to think about before you get in front of the camera, because often the pressure can feel, from a social media marketing perspective, whether it's video or not, if you take video out of it from a social media marketing perspective, the pressure can feel like, oh, we need to post something this week. We need to post something today. I need to post something right now. I haven't posted on LinkedIn this week. I'll do a quick video. But actually, if you can give yourself a little bit of time and space to actually strip all of this back and treat video no differently than if you were briefing in a graphic design agency to look after your visuals, or if you were putting together kind of a content marketing plan, actually have a step back and think, okay, we're going to create a social media marketing video strategy. And that doesn't mean that we have to have everything figured out right off the bat, but it does give us space to start to talk about, okay, what are our brand rules going to be if we're creating video? What might our audiences want to see? And actually put together almost a video brand guidelines document that you can refer back to. Have it as a one page, or have it as a cheat sheet. Make it fun, make it a little bit interactive for the team, but actually have a think back to, if we're doing video, what do we as a brand want to get from it? And what do our customers actually want to see and want to see from us? Because those videos on YouTube Shorts, there is no shortage of great comedy videos out there. And if someone wants a couple of minutes of just a bit of great stand-up comedy, are they going to want to get that from Michael McIntyre or from an up-and-coming comedian that's having a viral moment? Or are they going to expect your car dealership, for example, to be doing a quick skit that's going to be super entertaining, but actually means that it might not be the right place because you're spending quite a lot of money on your new vehicle? And are you really going to want to go in there? So there can be like little bits of kind of disconnect. And I think core kind of stage one is really thinking about what audiences might like to see and how do you best position and present your brand by video. Not everything needs to be video. So if there is something that is actually best kind of communicated as a visual, whether that's, a 20% off sale, that might work really, really well in terms of either a simple GIF, so a little bit of moving image, or something that is, a nice glossy graphic with your 20% off marketing messages. So as those audiences are scrolling, average scroll speed 1.7 seconds on Facebook, by the way, so you get so little time to grab attention. That's going to deliver a much more impactful message than if you are saying, hi, I'm Natalie and I'm the director at 𝗀𝗍𝗄 Media. We've got 20% off. Well, everyone scrolled past that already in 1.7 seconds. So it's just about how you communicate that message really, really well and make sure it works for your brand and for your business. I'm sure you see so many horror stories though, Pascal.
I do, but in a way, I understand, I suppose the influence of watching what's happening on YouTube Shorts, looking at the numbers and thinking, oh, maybe I should do that. And I've got very strong views about following trends on TikTok in particular, because I think, well, what are we doing here? Because to your point, if we have already spent a bit of time to explore our tone of voice, and that's going to be very clumsy, but a tone of video, then you could discount the vast majority of the trends, whether they are motion trends, music trends, special effects trends that are happening on TikTok and whatever. I think your description is very helpful. So I used to run quite a few video marketing masterclasses back in the days. Somehow this has stopped. And what I used to explain to people is that a video is an image that just happened to grow and become an adult. Do you know what I mean? So if you can imagine, a social media post where it would be a static image and text, then all you've done is promoting the static image into moving images. And if I then reflect on the history of movie and cinema, so first people would go and see silent movies, where that there'd just be an image moving. Then there was moving images to text, then moving images to text to music, and actually the voice bit came much later. And I think there's something that perhaps people could do and reassure themselves that there is no obligation for you to be on camera to begin with. That's not to say that gives you an excuse to go for those god awful AI faceless videos that are polluting the internet. But ultimately, the message can be conveyed, like you said, with moving images. So a video typically is 24 images per second. You can have some text and some music, and then the narration can be over. So the evolution of cinema and movies is also a bit of a guardrail about, don't think that you have to go straight into performing to camera, because it may not be required whatsoever. I think also with video marketing, there's very much like there is in social media marketing, you've got your scheduled content. I say scheduled, by the way, and this idea has been planned in advance and it's been perhaps shaped and edited, very, very well, some of the tech we can talk about. But there's also something that's more spontaneous in nature, where you grab your phone, you capture the 10, 20 seconds because you're at an event, or you film something that, make you smile, or you point a camera at a magazine article and you share a couple of things with it. So I think, you should also think there's things you can plan, but very much in the context of social media, the things you should go, I'm keen to share this with you now because I'm just so lucky to be here today. I'm so lucky to have spotted it. But the evolution of the media and the medium itself, I think, should be also a lesson for all of us.
No, absolutely. And sometimes it's helpful to bear that kind of bigger picture in mind and actually give yourself permission of, okay, I'm going to get started with video. That's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to test a few things. I'm going to lean into what works. And, sometimes it is just about when you are uploading a video for the first time to a social network, if you haven't previously uploaded something of that nature, actually, even the technicality of publishing that post can be a bit of a kind of learning experience. And sometimes with the best will of the world, even if you published 100 Facebook videos in the month previously, they'll change how that kind of upload process works and you'll be on the back foot again. So there's actually a lot of kind of learning and consideration in that. And I think it's just about, like you say, creating those good habits and actually feeling positive about it. We've, as a kind of organization, been trying to do a little bit more with video and the types of video that we capture in the 𝗀𝗚𝗃 office. And it's just been about kind of creating those, I guess, little routines where if you are out and about, you might do a couple of kind of seconds of, a really great skyscape, or, on the way to a meeting, or a bit of cool branding that you saw in the city centre, and actually just utilizing those clips. We don't have to have an idea for them straight away. Sometimes having one clip can be like, okay, great. That would be really interesting to expand on that. And we'll talk about other great examples of kind of print marketing, or what we found with all of our little, what we traditionally class as kind of B-roll clips of, if we're in a networking event, if we're out and about, if we're having like a really great coffee at a client office, just capturing that and popping them into little monthly roundups on our TikTok account. And it's a great way that we can be exploring a little bit with how our brand tells our story through video, even though we are kind of, a B2B brand. We're not demonstrating really glossy products, but it's actually how we take that kind of stories of us as individuals, weave those together and create content that is tangible, relevant, and entertaining to audiences without having to see a lot of us in a line doing the most recent TikTok dance trend, which I feel is coming back. I feel like we went into a post TikTok dance trend world, and it's back for 2025, and there's no space in the business world for me for that.
No, not at all. But, again, listening to you reminds me of a couple of things that I used to recommend. So if you look at video marketing as an overall strategy, and within that you have social media, there are three key elements to a video marketing strategy. So the first one is what I call video messaging, which is right at the heart of social media. So I'll come back to that one. Then you've got video meetings. So actually having Zoom calls or Teams calls are part of your video strategy, and how you decide to organize your backdrop and to structure your sessions and so on, and then how you repurpose them if, of course, they're not private conversations. Then you have the whole video marketing, case studies, promotional adverts, and that kind of things. But video messaging is the one that I felt is a good entry point. And there's three things you can do. So the first one, you could curate someone else's video efforts to begin with. Now, they'd be part of your network. Of course, you're not going to curate the competition. But for me, if you are already in the business of being useful online, whereby you share news and announcements, and it's video format, share that. You share advice and tips and tutorials, share that. People maybe recommending a new book to read or a new event to attend and so on. And then, of course, you've got what's happening in your business. And what's happening in your business can be a simple 20-second video of the environment. And I think the term entertaining is a tricky one, because people think that I've got to entertain, therefore I've got to perform. But it can be entertaining to actually feel that you are at the event, because you can hear the hustle and bustle of the conference center and that kind of things. With video messaging, we used to ask people to do three things that we felt would be easier. So the first one was to send thank you video message privately, just something you can do more and more now easily. So to get comfortable with this idea of maybe talking to the land, which is still a little odd, I mean, you're having a monologue, talking to yourself. But if it's just between you and someone that you know very, very well, and you are in a habit of saying thank yous or sending messages, then record a short video message can be part of the learning and building your confidence. The second one that we used to do was to do a video teaser of content you've published So what you could do, for example, you have an article on your website, or maybe you've published something on LinkedIn. You can actually use your phone, point the camera towards the computer screen, and talk over, without being seen necessarily, the article, and give a quick overview. And then finally, then you can go the other way, where you're in full view, with your network, and you share the news, you share the advice, and so on. But I think there's an evolution, and to your point about taking time, build a confidence by curating. Perhaps even ask someone, can I join you next time you're online, and do that. And then start to say thank you and well done messages on video, one-to-one. Start to promote your own content using video, and then start to then talk to the camera to kind of move on with your social activities.
Now that's a great kind of approach, Pascal. I love that. And we'll be kind of sharing that as a way for clients and contacts to get into video and feel a little bit more comfortable with it. But I think you're exactly right. If you're taking the pressure off at each stage and just kind of taking one little further step, it makes it a really nice natural kind of evolution. And there is so much stock image out there in terms of kind of moving images that have already been produced, that you can create your message. And yes, it's not your video content, but it is a way to utilize video for your brand and for your business, that actually you can put something together that does entertain audiences, because we would consider, think about entertaining your audience as anything that makes their day better for having seen it. So that could be either something that's a little bit of inspiration, a little bit like, experiencing an event that they didn't get to kind of be at, a little bit of advice, something that really shares a bit of knowledge or a bit of news with them, to actually really kind of develop that content that adds value to your timeline, so your audiences feel that your video is just ticking all the right boxes for them, and really kind of building that visibility and engagement for your brand.
So there's something that you've been working on for quite some time now, because video, has been something that you've experimented and you've tested before you would recommend it. And you've been able to actually literally combine all that advice into a series of bite-sized articles, which you've called the Social Media Video Academy on your website. Can you tell us a bit more about I suppose, the backdrop and the journey to eventually have all that wonderful resource created for people out there?
Oh yes, so it's something that we really wanted to kind of work on at 𝗀𝗀𝗃, and it's something that's been a kind of entirely collaborative team effort. But we really wanted to create value for our blog, and one of the key ways, and one of the things that we're always asked about, is kind of best practice video, particularly with the rise of TikTok. So this is something that we have been working on for a number of months, and it really sort of came about out of conversations kind of last year, talking about, okay, a lot of businesses are seeing TikTok and seeing the rise of TikTok, and they ask that really basic question of, does my business need to be on TikTok? And sometimes the answer to that is no. If your audiences aren't active there, it's perhaps not worth prioritizing that as part of your social media strategy. But that doesn't mean that your business, whatever your size or sector, can really ignore what is happening around that TikTok effect. So the kind of the push to consuming that short form media across all networks. And you see some networks that are leaning into it, the way that Instagram has kind of reformatted Reels. It's actually kind of positioned the grid entirely. The iconic squares are gone, kind of moving out for something that's a little bit taller, so it fits with video views a little bit more readily. So actually we're kind of seeing an entire shift across that, and your brand needs to know and be aware of this, and actually be capitalizing on the opportunities there. So we thought that we would kind of strip this back as best we could and say, okay, if you were starting as a complete beginner, what do you need to know about video? And then we've sort of worked around a series of blog titles from there. So around, what do you need to know in terms of generating ideas? What do you need to know in terms of video formatting for each social network, because they all have their own individual kind of best practices. What are your best practices across the board? So if you're only recording one video but you want to utilize it on as many channels as possible, what's the best way of kind of doing that? How to understand your kind of video metrics, and how to even go live, because there's still huge opportunity in live broadcasting, which I think, based on those kind of steps that we talked about, would be kind of pro level at the top when you're feeling super confident with kind of everything. But again, huge opportunity. So it's just designed to be really comprehensive series that gives all of the best practice information about really getting the most from video, but then also takes a deep dive into the practicalities of network by network. And I don't mind telling you that actually the video content on X kind of article in particular is usually one of our, if not the most read blog month on month on the 𝗀𝗚𝗃 archives, which always is a little bit of a shock to me, because I'm like, oh, I know X says it's a video first strategy, but are we really seeing it? But clearly there is a huge shift in appetite for audiences to be consuming that type of media and for brands to be creating it. So yeah, our video academy is really designed just to kind of elevate your video knowledge. They're all relatively quick reads, apart from the kind of brand formatting, which is a little bit more kind of a deep dive platform by platform. But yeah, hopefully there's some really, really great advice in there, and it will be thanks to Laura and Nicole on my team at 𝗀𝗚𝗃 who've helped that kind of come to life and kind of put those deep dive articles together.
Smashing. I know you put a lot of work behind it, so I was pleased that you made it all available and neatly organized. Just quickly before we move on to our next segment, I want to, again, this conversation, it's like I'm remembering things I used to say a lot, so I suppose my habit is to always film landscape. I just can't help it. My hand goes automatically in that mode because of my background as a video producer. And sometimes I'm like, oh, damn. But of course, if you know just enough about the rule of thirds, everyone to be dangerous, what you can do is use Canva to essentially position that landscape video in the middle and use the top third and the lower third for branding, for messages, for titling and that kind of things. I've done some tests as well where with the landscape videos you can afford to go square. That means that you have a top quarter and a bottom quarter. I know my maths, and you can still put the branding colors, the messages, the hashtags, and so on. So there's a way to occupy the screen. I think it's really important that for all it is vertical. If, like me, out of sheer habit, you don't always capture things vertically, there are ways and means. And can I just recommend everybody to go check out the brand new templates on Canva for vertical videos. I don't know if you had a look recently, Natalie, but they are just amazing. They are. I know that as a pro, you'd be using other platform, but the vertical videos, there's one, and I didn't bookmark it. I can't find it again. It was literally like a magazine. So you had different scenes, but each time, forgive me, you go into a different scene, that vertical space was used a bit differently. And the best way I can describe it was like a magazine. And I kept going back saying, where are you? It's like, because I would have used that. And then when it comes to the videos themselves, yeah, just brush up everyone on story structure, and of course you must plan repurposing. That video needs to give you more, kind of bang for your buck. So this is as much time as we have for this kind of video for social media recap. Everyone, send us your questions. Let us know if there's anything you want us to cover. Do make sure you check out, obviously, Natalie's and her colleagues' hard work on the Social Media Video Academy. The link will be in the show notes. But we now need to move on to our next segment, which is actually quite what will relate to video, which is the one tech or tactic to try out just after this. So, Natalie, have you chosen a tech or a tactic to make life easier as a social media marketer?
Oh, I have gone for a tactic this month. Yes. Okay. So I did a little bit of reading from the Pinterest bulletin, and one of the articles that really caught my eye was a bit of recent research that they did with Magna, and they revealed that actually it's possible to generate up to 24% more sales by optimizing for positivity when it comes to creating your social media content. So we will include the link to the full research piece so you can kind of unpick it. But I think for a really strong headline tactic takeaway is, can we keep it positive? So when you're creating content, is it that content that a little bit like video, genuinely brightens someone's day and makes things a little bit better for them. And I always think the best possible example of this is if you were writing a kind of blog and taking some headline content for your socials, would you go with, the 3 biggest mistakes that you can make from your video marketing? Or is it perhaps more positive to lead with the 3 biggest video opportunities for your brand right now? So most things can usually be spun in a way of, is this positive? Is this negative? To really just ensure that your brand is playing into this positivity. If your product solves a particular problem, can you focus on the solution rather than hammering home the problem? But there's lots of ways you can kind of apply it. So have a little think about your positivity overall. And while it is impossible to continuously always market, actually for a 24% increase in the return of sales, is it worth doing a little bit of testing for your brand and a little bit of exploration? But hopefully it's a good tactic that we can all have a little go of as we approach the summer months.
And I think what you're pointing out, and Pinterest always do such great research on there. It's really good. It's the tired formula for YouTube videos and YouTube thumbnails. It's always that, I mean, usually the reason why I'm leaving YouTube, and then essentially they are not really, and all that kind of negativity, and it's a tired formula. I think in a business context, and where people can see through it. So yeah, well done. And again, if people are thinking, well, how do I do that? I would recommend you use AI to give you options to consider. Very, very important. So I've got for some tech, because I thought with what we discussed during the spotlight on video for social media, we should help people. So I came across a news item from Instagram that they had released a standalone vertical video editing app. I don't know if you came across that news.
Yes, I have seen. How exciting.
So it's called 𝗬𝗏𝗧. They're so long and hard about the name. So, and essentially, it's kind of the stripped down version of the full editing kind of complement you would have on the Instagram app itself. Because to your point earlier about the amount of learning and wrapping your head around, editing on Instagram is become very busy. You might as well have a CapCut account when you're at it. So 𝗬𝗏𝗧 really is someone who is new, looking for an easy-to-use vertical video editor where the options are tight, that you haven't got as much as the one, but that could be a lovely way to get started. Or even if you are a power, video editor, sometime you want to work fast. And edits could be just that lovely companion where you record the video. You don't have a gazillion options when it comes to the font and the music and that kind of things. You just work fast and then you can publish it accordingly. But I can see perhaps tactically as well, to have a standalone app means that perhaps they can encourage people to then think about Instagram more and the Meta ecosystem. But I'm going to also, if I may, give people a second option. In particular, if in B2B, perhaps B2C, you'll be doing a lot of Teams and Zoom calls and you have the recording. Okay, it's landscape. Okay, perhaps doesn't look particularly neat and nice. Case in point, for all you and I have gone through all the different tech. We've settled back full circle into using Zoom for recording this audio video magazine. So there is a UK business based not far from Durham called 𝗀𝗄𝗧. We've mentioned them on the show before, but their platform has increased immeasurably. So this is an AI-powered editor that will convert essentially your Zoom calls into vertical videos. So normally, as you know, I would be side by side, not a window on the left, window on the right. Then what 𝗀𝗀𝗧 can do is position them, one top of the other. So you occupy the space. You can put the lovely captioning that people like. You can, using AI, find the best bits within a half-hour conversation. Lots of things you can do. But I think it would be lovely to support a UK business. But if you are already doing Zoom meetings, then you can move into Zoom marketing with the 𝗀𝗀𝗧. So edits by Instagram and 𝗀𝗀𝗧 are my recommendations.
Oh, they sound so good, Pascal. I'll be checking out both.
Thank you very much. Well, whilst we're in the subject of recent news and announcements, let's move on to our next segment, Important, Not Important, just after this. Okay, so I've researched the latest news and announcements. I've got 8 news items to read out to you, Natalie. You're going to tell me whether it's important or not important. And number one is about LinkedIn, who's going to allow users to add video uploads to articles. Now we can do it natively as opposed to embedding the link from YouTube or Vimeo. This will be available for newsletters as well. Important, not important?
I think it is important. It's a step away from YouTube and improved network functionality.
Thank you very much. Number two, WhatsApp lets you now add music to your status. You can now add soundtrack to your updates with 15 seconds to 15 seconds videos of photos from the global music library. And of course, all end-to-end encrypted. Important, not important?
I think it's fun, but I don't think it's important.
Number three, Facebook revived the Friends tab, a simplified feed showing posts only from your friends, no ad or suggested content, which aims to recapture the platform's nostalgic community-driven vibe.
I think important for individuals, disaster for brands, but I'm not sure the uptake will be as substantial as they hope.
We've got more news from LinkedIn, who's expanding its analytics. Now you'll be able to know about new comment impression counts and a My Network feed showing your first degrees connections updates to help you track engagement and prioritize meaningful interactions.
Important. I think the more metrics we can get, the better. You don't always have to be measuring all of them all the time, but it massively helps if you are developing your strategy.
Well, TikTok is back in the news. The US sale deadline has been extended to mid-June 2025, and we have ongoing talks with Oracle and Amazon. The app remains active for now, but uncertainty lingers.
Oh, it's important. It's, one of the biggest networks, and we're not sure what the kind of future holds for the platform. Super important.
Yeah, Meta is testing ad-free subscription. UK users might soon be able to pay to remove ads from Facebook and Instagram, similar to strategies seen in the EU.
Not important. I can't. Who's going to pay for Facebook?
That's intriguing. We're going to go back to TikTok, who is trying to crack down on AI disinformation. They had to remove over 51,000 AI videos lately under EU rules and introducing new tools to make sure that AI generated content, is being labeled correctly.
Important. It's a really kind of pressing issue, and audiences need relevant safeguards and good knowledge in place for this.
And finally, from LinkedIn again, they have integrated with Calendly. Premium users can now add a book appointment buttons to their LinkedIn profile, hoping to streamline client meetings directly via the platform.
It's neat, but it's specific, not important.
So let me go back then to this business of 𝗪𝗪 as well, carrying on about videos. So I gone back to writing LinkedIn articles a lot more because now it's kind of working. The algorithm is no longer broken. But it is annoying when you embed a video from YouTube, even a podcast, from Spotify, because essentially there's that blackout frame and people have got to click on it. There's essentially this friction there. So I love the idea of embedding videos. And then, 15 minutes video is quite long. So you'll be able to do a lot of things around putting extracts and the like. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this news.
No, it's really exciting. I think anything where it's finally got a little bit more video functionality on LinkedIn itself is really only helpful for the platform. A lot of networks really don't like that YouTube link because you are directing their traffic away from their kind of core activities, which is please to stay on LinkedIn, stay on Facebook, and continue to scroll here. So I think it's really good for the networks because they'll feel like they're retaining their audience, but actually for user experience to just be able to watch that nice and natively on LinkedIn without having to go elsewhere, with having it display properly, without kind of it's not playing. So yeah, I think it's just better all around, and hopefully they'll continue to extend that video kind of duration and can kind of build on that from here.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, this recording in particular, I mean, if we could be towards the half hour, 45-minute mark, it could be a webinar. I mean, ultimately you can go live on LinkedIn and there's no limits, to the point in terms of minutes. So Facebook reviving the Friends tab. I mean, I can imagine individuals rejoicing at the news, but in terms of being discovered or being featured on someone's newsfeed, that's going to be a bit tougher for businesses.
Absolutely. I think that what has happened though behaviorally is we have seen a little bit of a shift around Facebook and the frequency that people may post on Facebook. Remember when Facebook first launched, it was really kind of, overshadowing MySpace, and it was the kind of the leading network and everyone was on it. So all of everyone's kind of digital social networking activity was on Facebook, which is the nostalgic Facebook that we remember with those really busy timelines and lots of kind of communication. Whereas now, I feel like most audience members will have multiple social networks. Actually, their activity is a little bit more diverse. They might post once a week on Facebook, and once a week on LinkedIn, and once a week on X, and once a week on their Instagram. So rather than get actually that really buzzy Facebook feel, I'm not sure that that's still there. I think that's perhaps something of our kind of nostalgia, kind of previous experience. Does also bring in kind of interesting kind of elements where if someone saw an ad and commented on the ad, does that then show up in the friends and family feed because it's activity, or does it sort of kind of get filtered out? So it'll be interesting to see this in kind of practice rather than just kind of in theory. But I think it might actually show that there's not that much activity on Facebook from the people that we know. And it's perhaps more about the businesses and the brands mixed with that human activity. So I think it'll be an interesting one to see. I think it's going to be a bit of an evolution. And whether it taps into that nostalgia, whether we're all applying that filter, or whether it just doesn't necessarily take off in the way that everyone would perhaps think it might on surface level.
Yeah, I would agree. And by the way, just quickly before I move on to TikTok, to my friends out there, do not put music on your WhatsApp status update. Yeah, there's enough distraction as it is. I don't mind them actually when they're shared as stories and reels, which are part of the way which you can communicate. But it would be bizarre to be able to tap on someone's profile on WhatsApp and then suddenly music starts to play.
I think
And
that's nostalgic. I think it's MySpace era where you might have a little record
yeah,
playing when someone went on your profile. It's giving MSN Messenger vibes where you might have used song lyrics. So I think, yeah, it's very, very 2005, which is nice from a nostalgia perspective. Perhaps a bit of a kind of red herring in terms of what you should be doing with your socials in 2025.
let's wrap up on TikTok then. So. TikTok has been told to pretty much leave the US and no longer operate in the US. There is one out for them, is to be bought by somebody else. And therefore, the deadline's been extended now, I think 2 or 3 times by now, to mid-June. And they're looking for a platform to take it over. And through that, they no longer have a link with the Chinese government and Chinese ownership. So talks with Oracle and Amazon, there could be others out there. Am I right in remembering that even Meta tried or made an offer, perhaps?
I think that Meta have been in the conversation. I think Elon Musk has been in the conversation. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of billionaires hovering around TikTok in the US right now.
So what do you think? Do you think that, well, there's two options. Either there will be no buyer and TikTok will disappear from the US kind of online ecosystem, or there will be a buyer. Which way do you think is going to go?
I genuinely don't know. My gut is, of course, it will be bought. But actually, when you start to unpick that and think, okay, well, who might buy it and for how much money, it it starts to become a little bit kind of more concerning because we were with TikTok. One of the key elements has been the rise of TikTok Shop. It means that it sort of works on an Amazon style basis where the products are held in warehouse and kind of shipped out. So it's become this massive commercialized platform which works really, really well for certain demographics. Amazon already has the kind of massive online retail kind of presence. If those two elements collide, is this actually good from a kind of, consumer perspective? So it makes it a little bit trickier to say, oh, of course someone will buy it, and of course that will be a good thing because their network will be saved. I think if it is purchased, we're going to see another iteration. It's going to be purchased for a specific goal for one of these organizations. I think actually your best bet would probably be Meta buying it out of the players in the room. Um,
Mm.
simply because they have acquired WhatsApp and they have acquired Instagram, and they've got form for actually not changing things too much. They've obviously commercialized these platforms, but both of them, you would say that to some extent have maintained a level of kind of integrity to the elements that they have purchased, which we don't necessarily see on other platforms. No names mentioned, X, but it really sort of, it makes it, is it the communications platform? Is it going to be a sales platform? Even more so, is it going to change the nature of this? And if it did, is it in a way that's going to be actually detrimental for all of the users, in a way that they then jump ship and they go elsewhere? Or will they stay and modify their behavior? So it's so interesting. The only guarantee I can make is whatever happens, it's going to be interesting to kind of see. But I don't think it's also beyond the realms, even, the state of things in the States at the moment, that actually they might not get this across the line in terms of kind of a direct sale from a kind of Chinese owned brand. So whether it does become that TikTok is no more in the States and actually those users need to migrate to a different platform, I think it's most likely it gets bought. I think it's highly likely it then has another evolution and goes into something else in a bit of a different space.
Yeah, well, listen, by the time we record our next episode of the Social Media Newsroom, we'll have an update. The other would be further extension, which would be a little odd. People might get impatient. A purchase, or literally a deadline saying, but that date you will no longer operate, within the UK internet environment. So fascinating, though, absolutely fascinating. And when you think about, only a few weeks ago, we celebrated 32 years of internet. I don't think people have predicted, this type of event taking place, when it was all about sharing information and getting people closer together. Anyway, thanks again for taking part in the important, not important segment. We'll move on to our final segment, film marketing, social media special, just after this. So for film marketing, social media special, we went for Sinners, released about a month ago, give or take, directed by Ryan Coogler of Black Panther fame, back with Michael B. Jordan, who plays twins. So if you're a big fan of Michael B. Jordan, you get two Michael B. Jordan in a movie taking place in 1932 Mississippi, combining so many different story elements. But it is, by and large, a horror film. I've seen it. You have not seen it just yet.
It's on the list. It's top of the list, but not yet.
Let's whet your appetite with the trailer.
I've been all over this world. I seen men die in ways I ain't even know was possible. Love you, brother. Be careful. I will. With all the things that I've seen, I ain't ever seen no demons, no ghosts, no magic. Till now. Now get back inside. Let me in, man. Some weird shit going on out here.
You keep dancing with the devil. One day he's gonna follow you home.
Cami, are you excited about potentially seeing Sinners very soon?
Yes, I can't wait. I think it's going to be the kind of, I guess, next level horror film I've perhaps been waiting for. Because I let you in on a little secret, Pascal. I was a little bit disappointed by nosferatu, so I am overdue
Likewise.
a good vampire movie.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, the storytelling, the cinematography, everything you've heard that is good about this movie is not hype. And what it felt like you sat there watching someone's craft in terms of the vision, what they put on screen, the incredible combination of the era, 1930s, the color schemes, the horror supernatural, the way they played the vampire lore that we know as an audience, 2025, but that they don't know as characters in 1930s. The element of music and what music does to essentially almost create a gate in terms of time and space is just very, very, very clever. So it's just a story very, very well told, and we'll look as well some of the technical side. So looking at them, because I realize I can't talk about the movie too much because you've not seen it just yet. So talking about the marketing then, so we have official websites. We've got the Warner Brothers website. They have an entry there. And we have the sinnersmovie.net. There's not much going on there. And when it comes to social media, primarily we have Instagram and we have X. So, and within that, of course, you've got the hashtag and two hashtags that may indicate some of the tactic they've used to communicate, about this movie. You've got Sinners Movie as one hashtag, and shot with IMAX film cameras. So they almost kind of combined the two together. In terms of the marketing and promo pack, I've shared them with you in the show notes. You've got posters now. It seems to be, there's two ways in which a movie gets the poster treatment. There is the one poster to rule them all, or you have a family of posters, and in a way, sometimes it's hard to keep track. Which camp do you like the one poster that is definitive form of marketing, or do you like to have a bit of a series and people try different things?
Oh, see, I am a bit of a traditionalist and I quite like the iconic movie poster. I feel like it really amplifies that message, but I can, of course, see value in the kind of the variety of posters. It gives you a much broader appeal because it gives you almost a kind of second and third chance to actually grab audience with story elements, showcase a little bit more of what's happening. So I am a supporter of both, but I think it's kind of old school. I like the one, keep it simple, and kind of really communicate that with audiences.
So people, if you go online, you'll see the posters. They've borrowed obviously that kind of orange, gold, color theme in terms of the sunset, and fire and the term sinners. I can never tell. Is it flames? Is it paint being smudged? Is it blood? You've got all that stuff going on there. But there are so many different posters from standalone, just Michael B. Jordan, to actually two Michael B. Jordans because they play the twins, all the way to a montage of characters, the guitar, but also because of the technical element of the movie, you'll have the IMAX version of the movie. You've got the Dolby cinema versions. You've got all that, and if you're a big fan, it gives you lots of things to collect. It takes me back to the days of almost Lord of the Rings, where you have lots of things you could collect. And what they did also, which I do like are the character posters. And you've got 10 central characters, including the two brothers, Smoke and Stack. Again, but with a different kind of style. So if you're a brand purist, this is your biggest nightmare. If you take on board that there is something daring by this movie. There's something where it was almost like a live experimentation. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that they didn't know what they were doing, but it feels like it was just on the edge where they were exploring different ways. A bit like music, really, where you can play the same tracks in many different ways. You can dress yourself very different ways. And I feel with the poster artwork, there was this idea of, let's explore this. Let's see how far we can take it. I thought it was very, very interesting. So posters, Leading the way, then of course you've got trailers, from teaser trailers to official trailers. Now, what is interesting, I became aware of Sinners with the original trailer because I follow a couple of channels on YouTube, and the first trailer was in September 2024. Now, bear in mind this movie was released eventually in April 2025. That's a long stretch. So I heard about it or saw the trailer in September last year, got excited, and then nothing. And that's a tricky one, isn't it? That's a tricky one as a fan. So when the second trailer reappeared in January, I'd almost lost track of what this was about. But thought I like horror, love vampire, love the director, love the actor, love the era. The whole package was still interesting to me. But people had to be very, very patient because, in fact, one of the key tactic that was deployed by the filmmakers and producers was a bit of a slow reveal, you could say, play on the characters and so on, and almost what I could qualify as a marketing sprint for the last 2, 3, 4 weeks. What did you make of that?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. And when I was doing my research into how the film had been promoted, it is that really, really distinct kind of 2 weeks before that release date. It really benefited from that kind of big push, which I think kind of makes sense. It's a risky strategy, but if you are dynamic enough, I think you can really, really pull it off, because it just means that you're building all of that hype at the right moment and close enough that audiences actually can start to buy tickets right away. You can start to plan and book. It's tangible, it's defined, and it makes it seem a little bit more kind of imminent, rather than that sort of more traditional kind of steady pace of marketing where the kind of really build up to the film release and there's little mini milestones along the way. So risky, but if you can get that hype right and really capitalize on that massive visibility just before people are able to go and see the film, it is perhaps a winning strategy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it'd been fascinating to spend time with the marketing team, the distributors, to see what was their thinking. But you have a movie that you announced in September, and you're late, in releasing it as well. And then reading, as you do, do the research, she was also moved by a number of weeks to make space for 𝗫𝗫 17, a Korean kind of sci-fi movie. So it's tough, to be a film marketer. So they had that one angle hook, you could say, that they could deploy. Obviously, was the technical side of the movie making. So both the IMAX and the 70mm format. So that allowed for featurettes and Q&As, and leaning on that side for the audience that finds it interesting. And I've got to be careful because I don't have the data, but I can imagine not everybody cares necessarily about this. Perhaps you and I, we do. There was suddenly a big push for go and see the IMAX, go and see the 70mm, but not all movies theaters have that screening capability. So I think it was fine to do the technical side and marketing side, but really where they could have done a fraction more, I think, was on the horror. Raw and actually say no, we're almost going against it. Where they've been super smart on social media was the resharing of the reviews. They were very, very much on it when it comes to fan art, because most brands and movies are not, but also sharing praises from fellow filmmakers, and none other than Tom Cruise. Literally a week after the official release was on his official Twitter account, seen holding a ticket with a big, massive Sinners landscape poster. I mean, you couldn't think of a better advocate and champion for your movie, could you?
No, you really couldn't, in terms of kind of getting it out there and kind of capitalizing on those, let's say, high net worth connections. Then you couldn't ask for a more iconic star of a kind of big screen to really get on board with your marketing efforts.
Now, people may be raising an eyebrow, but actually, can we call him Tom, or do we say Tom Cruise?
I think we can call him Tom. I think we're close enough that we can call him Tom.
So I would say Tom has always done that, though. It's not like he's doing it just for Sinners for the last few years. Well, from the time he was doing Mission Impossible during COVID, he's been a massive advocate to go back to the theatre. As you'll see on the screenshot that I did for you in the show notes, Tom says, must see in cinema and stay through the end credits. if I may, no spoiler, encourage you to stay, because people didn't when I was there, and I felt so bad for them because stay, just trust me. And
That's
it's
good.
not.
And I should have stopped everyone and be like, no, don't leave. Tom Cruise says we need to stay.
And it's not Marvel, his 30 seconds, the crumbs. It's like stay. And
Oh,
you'll understand why. So listen, as you can tell from my reaction from what's happening there, Sinners is great. It's just something that you want to have and own as a Blu-ray. It's got that surprise feel of From Dusk Till Dawn, although now it's part of cinema history, but it goes beyond that. And I was wondering, is it possible that perhaps the marketing team got caught off guard by the success of Sinners? Because if you look at the numbers from what it cost to make it, what it's earned, it's one of the highest grossing movie of the year so far. And is it possible that in that marketing sprint and that surprise that they may have missed some key social media tactics? I wanted to kind of reflect on that. And for me, the first one that I was thinking when I was looking at the Instagram account and the X account, for all actually it's quite busy, one could be forgiven to think that it's not particularly well organized. It feels more like a logging of lots of things, but I didn't get a sense of maybe a strong theme or a recurring thread. And certainly in the Instagram, they didn't take advantage yet, of grouping some of those posts. But again, it would be lovely to talk to the marketing team to get their feeling. But is there anything else that you think, now that they are post-marketing sprint, that they could do to capitalize on the success of the movie?
no, I think you're absolutely right, Pascal. I think that success almost snuck up on them because there's a place for horror films and it is a very popular genre, but typically horror films are a bit of a kind of an offshoot of the main kind of blockbuster types of films that we might typically see. And it's sort of, they do have a big engaged following, but I do feel it is a touch more of a niche cinematic interest. And it is possible that because this is a horror film, it was always perceived to have a bit of a cap on its potential because it's going to be a horror film, it's going to be a great horror film. But typically, the average IMDb score for a horror film isn't necessarily what it would be if you compared it to kind of other films. So I think typically audiences will tolerate a little bit more with a horror film and perhaps a little bit of a lower standard of marketing because it is slightly more niche, it's a little bit more obscure. You don't get used to those really big glossy kind of all-encompassing campaigns. I'm thinking about the discussions we had around Oppenheimer, around Barbie, where they were clearly very well-oiled marketing machines, and they went from one big thing to the next big thing, and it had clearly strategically been planned in advance. I got the same vibes from the Instagram account, and I think there is huge potential to keep that momentum going because it has been that kind of really big surprise hit. I think there's lots that you could do to build on the elements that are already there and already being done really, really well. One of my favorite bits, because I had to be very careful with my research not to get any spoilers, but I did check out the official soundtrack on Spotify, and I had been given a heads up on this, but actually within the album notes, there is a huge treasure trove of references, almost all of which I am certain went completely over my head when I had a little look through. But I am looking forward to, after having seen the film, to go back in and to actually kind of digest those. But I know it'd been very, very well received because it had created an almost scavenger hunt online for fans to dive deeper into the lore. So I guess this would be traditionally referred to as the Cineverse, where we can actually explore the characters, the themes, and with all good vampire films, the origins and what the next kind of immortal years may be. So it was really nice to kind of see those elements, but I think there's loads that you could do around that in terms of those audio clips and those references, around remixes for things like Instagram and things like TikTok, where actually you can let that audience, that community that has got behind this film in such a substantial way, continue with their fan theories and their elements and kind of bringing those narratives together and actually keeping it really nice and engaging for lovers of the film to kind of see what the next kind of chapter might be or what the archives might reveal.
And you're absolutely right. The music is such an important part. The story is about essentially the two brothers opening a nightclub of sort. They have a different term for it. Name escapes me now, and giving the local people who cannot go into town because of the white supremacist their own place to party, relax, and connect, and so on. So I think you're absolutely right that was definitely an element that they could work on. For me, there was also something in and around the look of the movie and the look of the posters, where I'm thinking there's got to be something in there where using the filters that we have today, using some of the imagery, you could have crafted something as a message you could send over, and the remixing, if they could give you access to a bank of quotes and snapshots and so on that you could send over to your friends, because that phrase or that line from the song is just perfect, I think would have just helped a lot. It's just I would say more complicity with the audience that would have been just perfect.
No, absolutely. I think there is loads that you could do because people will love to get involved. And I think certainly even playing on the fact that John Michael B. Jordan, sorry, my words escaped me there. Michael B. Jordan played the dual role. Actually, would there be an opportunity for, at the very least, a Snapchat filter that could help you perfect your own dual role and really make kind of user-generated content super shareable, helps really reiterate that kind of word of mouth and really build excitement and hype. And I think it would be something that would be a great element either ahead of going to see the film or even basically having something to participate in when you're a little bit more kind of plot wise and you're fully aware of what those characters might fully represent and what the themes of the film might be. You might have a very different take before and after kind of seeing it as well, but I think there's lots you could do with it.
The character posters is also an element that you could lean on, where you could have fun asking people, predicting who's going to be the first one to turn into a vampire. You could have a lot of fun with that, and assuming that Michael B. Jordan would be the hero, so you can assume, well, it'll last, it'll be there till the end. But I think there's some element, maybe you're right, of sharing more about the law and the 1930s superstition, particularly around the Mississippi. And you'll see when you watch the movie, the opening credits actually give you some indication of some of the belief system that were there and superstition and so on. You could have played on that. But I know that you noted in the show notes, that it's playing really to the traditional vampire rules of the invite and the garlic and the cross and so on. Very much like, do you remember that movie from the 80s? Oh, what was it called?
Lost Boys.
Lost Boys is one. Yeah, and then there's the other one that the poster I've got it in front of me, where Chris Sarandon plays a neighbor that moves in next door, and he's a vampire, and then the young neighbor has to try and kill him. And fans watching this are going to be screaming at me for not remembering the title. But anyway, but so we all know the rules. So I think there could be something in there where there's many times in a movie where the vampire say, well, are you not going to invite me in? And then as a movie audience, you go, no, you can't. But of course, the 1930s characters don't know the rules just yet. So I think there's probably something in there with a bit of interaction where online, as the vampire, so you're going to let me in, you choose yes or no, and then that triggers a different scene. So if you say yes, well, you're in trouble. If you say no, well, the vampire tried to to kind of charm you and using music and that kind of thing. So yeah, honestly, Sinners is such a great movie, and it is what you want when you go to the cinema, to be surprised by what they've chosen to do, how they've chosen to tell the story, whilst using really something that would be familiar to many of you. So yeah, it's been absolutely great. So when you reflect now, of course you've not seen the movie, but when you reflect on what we've discussed with regard to the marketing, any lessons, any kind of, things that we could use as ideas for our own businesses?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's lots of great themes, and hopefully these stand up just as well after I've seen the film. But absolutely, timing is everything. So that 2 week push actually really just kind of reiterates the value in kind of building that narrative and making sure that you can actually generate some good traction and good visibility for your brand. I guess it's almost a word of kind of warning that there is such a thing as starting too early when it comes to film marketing, and there is such a thing that's kind of reiterates that for your own business. If you're launching a product, service, talking about an event, it's got to be in a time scale where audiences find it relevant and they can ideally act upon it. So really interesting to see the kind of timing. Bit of a risky strategy for a film, but it's definitely paid off. I think there's also, this is probably one of the ones that we always talk about when it comes to cinema, but actually nurturing your audience, giving them elements that they find valuable, leaning in, so actually appreciating the value that they offer for your brand, and creating content that they go on to see, because it's that visibility, that engagement. And I think one of the ones that is perhaps a little bit underrated, because in business, and particularly in small businesses and small business owners, we can all be a touch too modest for our own good. But I do feel like Sinners really, when it started to get that critical acclaim, the Tom Cruise endorsement, the 98% score on Rotten Tomatoes, which is ridiculous for a horror film, but clearly really, really well earned. Actually leaning into that, so leaning into the hype. Don't be, if you've got that award, it's not something that you shouldn't talk about. It is something that you should talk about, and you should feature, and you should be glad of the publicity and the visibility, and embracing the things that you do really, really well, particularly if that is a little bit of a break for your genre or sector.
Yeah, and with regard to the embracing the acclaims, what other movies have done really well is to repurpose the words, sometimes they've been said, or the videos, into their own style. So if you think about the clearly very striking style of Sinners, you could have literally repurposed that and repost them. So I think back to the social media, where it's okay to reshare as is, but it's also a lot better to repurpose that praise and put it out there. And we all need to get a Tom Cruise approved statement of something like a badge into your post, moving forward. But I can't wait for you to tell me once you've seen it what you think of the movie. I wouldn't be surprised if you, like me, end up buying the Blu-ray, so you can also watch about the making of and that kind of things. Wow. Well, listen, everyone, thank you very much for keeping up with us and enjoying, this film marketing social media special review. We've gone through a lot today. We've talked about video, we talked about tech, we talked about recent news and so on. We've looked at also what can happen when you're surprised by the success of your own content and what you can do to adjust your marketing accordingly. This is the end of the Social Media Newsroom. Until the next one, please go out there and make sure your social media is done right. I was Pascal Fintoni, and she was Nathalie Emene. Bye for now.